Start, thank you to both of you, Dan and Eric, for inviting me. I do not take this lightly because you have opportunity to pick many speakers. And only thing is I'm missing the Celtics game, but that's okay. Um, the question and answer, I think we are a small group here. So I really wouldn't mind getting interrupted, and answering question at any time because, these talks are really the purpose of these talks to help or educate or learn from each other, because I don't take it lightly that after a whole day of work that folks are here to to listen to me. So hopefully the next 60 minutes or 60 to 70 minutes get you some benefit and you learn something new. And one thing is, I always want to make sure that the conversation doesn't stop when this meeting stops. So, at any point after this, if you have any question, comments, or you ask a question, you feel free to reach out to me. So that that being as I'm saying that, so this is my contacts. I'm not going to read my bio. On the left, there are four things you can use any of this. My website, uh, via LinkedIn, Twitter, or send me a direct email, and I will answer your question. I think this will be the last time I will be presenting this session in this format because um, hopefully SQL Server 2022, if in SQL Beats I heard the public preview is going to come out by end of June, right? And next week is a build conference. So, I'm not saying that it's going to be any surprise or anything, but Build is always a big conference. Microsoft announced a lot of their stuff, so who knows, right? And I will talk about a couple of things that's coming up in 2022 that are not under NDA, that has been publicly spoken by either Bob Ward, Pedro Lopez, or other product managers and PMs from Microsoft. So I'll touch upon those, but I do not have a way to demo those because there are some insider programs and those are not supposed to be shared publicly yet. But if you have any question on those, do stop me. Um, and if someone, Eric or Dan, can stop me if there is a chat, any question, stop me anytime. This session can really it can go longer, but I want to respect the time. So uh, with either we can talk a little bit longer and then rush on the demo, or we can vice versa, right? We can rush on the slides and then spend a little bit more time on the demo. So it's up to you. If you have any preference, please put in the chat so I can adjust accordingly. We are a small group, like I said. I wouldn't mind adjusting, based on your preference, because it's not about me, it's about you folks, because you're the one taking time out and came here to listen to me. So I want to respect that. So put your comments, either way. You want to, um, talk more about the features, pros and cons, and then you might see, I can download your, code from GitHub, and then I can practice it myself or run it, or go through the slides quicker, and let's focus on the demo, right? Either way, I'm fine with either way. But I do not want to drag it too long, and then people have families, dinner, and yeah. So more demo is nice. That's what Mark's preference. I would still want to see one or two more, and then I'll decide which way we go. But let's move on. So before I really dive into the topic, I want to talk a little bit, very briefly, why after all these years SQL Server has been around. I haven't used anything older than 2005. This is my second career. I used to be in merchant navy. I drove ships for 11 years. I used to go to LA a lot, bringing ships from Korea, China, and container ships. But then I only started using 2005, but some of you probably used even the previous versions. But why suddenly in 2017 Microsoft started coming up with this? Initially they called it adaptive query processing, and then there are more features came in. Now it's a family of intelligent query processing. So what's the what is the rationale behind it, right? Why would Microsoft? And as you will see in this presentation, the 2017 SQL Server 2019, and now there will be a lot more features being added in 2022. So what's the reason behind all this, right? Why would Microsoft do that? So let's talk about this for a minute, because unless we appreciate the reason, right, there is no it doesn't make sense for you to listening to me and listening to this talk. And if you don't know what is the ultimate benefit if you master these things that I'm going to show you. So very briefly, and this one slide can be an hour or hour and a half, or can be a 2 hour talk, right? Once you submit a query to SQL Server Engine, what happens behind the scene, right? How does it get the execution plan? How does it get the cardinality estimates? What's the cost? How does it assign CPU memory? uh, how does it decide, is it going to go serial, parallel, and what happens, right, behind the scene itself can be it's a big talk. But very briefly, once we submit a query, then there are a couple of phases, as you can see on this. In the parsing phase, the query, um, it parse in a logical tree, right? At that point is actually, it doesn't look at the exact even the objects exist or not. It just see that logically if my query makes sense. And once that is done, it goes to transformation. During the transformation phase, query optimizer, it actually create bunch of trees, and each tree are they're different variations, but they guarantee that you're going to get the same result set. And then the next step is for each of those trees, and each of the operators within those trees, or each of the steps within those trees, get a cost or get a cardinality estimate. What does that mean? Means how many rows might qualify, right? So if I'm running this predicate, or if this predicate is true, false, or unknown, whatever, how many records might get qualified, and how many records I'll be passing to the next operator. Once that is done, then each of the operators get a cost based on that estimate of the cardinality, and those costs get added, and then it get a total cost for each tree. Whatever tree is the cheapest is the winner. That means I can give you the result set that you asked with the cheapest cost. And here cost means not dollar wise, it's more of resource wise, right? CPU, memory, IO, and all that. And the lowest cost one gets saved in the cache. So next time you call me, I can skip all these first four steps. I can go and get that plan from the cache, and then I can execute it, right? So all looks good. And what happens if my cardinality estimates get wrong? Then I get a wrong cost, and then that plan get in the plan cache, and then every time I'm executing a suboptimal plan. Uh, why does cardinality estimate can go wrong? I have a whole hour talk that I gave in the past summit called Think Like a Cardinality Estimator. That's again itself can be an hour and a half talk that why cardinality estimates can go wrong. And even if it doesn't get wrong, right? Once, even if you update statistics with 100% sample, with 100% data, uh, you only get 200 steps in the histogram, right? And if you are using statements like statements, greater than, equal to, less than, equal to, these are all hard coded, right? So even if you update your stats right now, next time you use one of those operators, you're going to get estimate. You are not going to get 100% exact number. Now, if this thing go wrong, then all of these things can go wrong. And what do I mean by that, right? So based on that cost, a query decides if I'm going to go into parallel or I'm going to go into serial. And there are two other settings called maxed up and cost threshold of parallelism. If you do not know those, definitely you want to look those up. Now, if my cost is wrong, a parallel plan can go serial, means now I'm going to take longer. And if a plan uh, could just go serial, but because my estimates are wrong and it's high, now I'm going to go parallel. So what I'm doing, I'm actually wasting more CPU, right? And what will that happen? Means other queries are going to wait for the scheduler for the CPU. The threads cannot get on the CPU, and they will be waiting, right? So what happened now? If you could run, say, like 100 users concurrently, now you'll be able to run less. Same thing for memory grant, right? If you get more memory grant, means you are wasting the memory. Others are waiting for memory. If you get more less, then now you're going to spill to disk. And once you spill to disk, you might say, oh, now we have SSDs, but still If you're talking about in memory and in SSD, you're still talking about microsecond versus millisecond. So again, your concurrency is going to get affected. Seek scan or seek plus scan, again, depending on the numbers. If your cardinality is wrong, you will make wrong decisions. Your joins, nested loop join, hash join, merge join, all based on the cardinality. Aggregates, whether I'm going to do a stream together. The features in 2017 and 2019 get called intelligent query processing. And as you can see on the memory grant feedback, in 2017, we only had batch mode. In 2019, it got expanded to the row mode. Now, the question is, how did Microsoft decided that they're going to work on these items? Like, well, they're going to work on the adaptive join, they're going to work on memory grant feedback, uh, table variable default compilation, as you can see here. So what was the rationale behind it, right? The the main thought process that Microsoft had behind this project, and still today, because they're, like I said, 2022, a bunch of things are coming up, is that code refactoring take times, right? Once you refactor a code, you
Hey,
have to.
Tab, we lost your presentation. Can you go ahead and present again? We lost your screen that you were sharing.
Oh, that's interesting. Why would that happen?
Well,
I
no,
don't know if
I think it was our fault. We had
y-
to.
yeah, I do not have the share button anymore.
Oh, okay, let me fix that for you here.
So you might have to make me a presenter.
Yep, let me
Yeah,
just save this again here.
yeah, I got it now. Yeah, it's probably some button somewhere. Okay, you can see it right now, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, sorry about that. So code refactor takes time, right? If you have to refactor your code, you have to go through, dev QA, and all those. And Microsoft actually knew that, in like some of the data, uh, some of the limitations, right? With the data structure, this was well known to Microsoft. And in old days, the data sets are smaller, and they didn't expect, like, some of these things will be used the way today we use, and the data sets are going to get so bigger. To give uh, I'll turn it on later on if we come to a question and answer.
Okay.
So sorry about that. uh, I know it's nobody's fault, but I'm sure organizers know what they're doing. So let's move ahead. It's unfortunate, but things happen. Yeah, so what I was saying, why Microsoft picked this particular ones, right? So, they're now trying to fix some old limitations. And then other thing is, as I showed you in the slide, that once a query is cached in the plan, next time a similar query comes, it clears the hash and match the hash. And if the hash matches, hash is kind of like a DNA of a query. If it matches, then it's, oh, I do not need to do anything. I already have a plan. I'm going to use it. It's like, you go in the hospital, right? Or go to see a doctor. What do? Last name, date of birth. Okay, they look up, check you, and next person come, last name, date of birth. So they don't need to create this plan over and over. But what Microsoft is now doing, if I have a plan in the cache, if I see some kind of warning, why don't I learn from that warning and fix it when you come to operate next time, right? And I'll show you some of this warning, some of this what I'm talking about. And there are three core principles that they wanted, that as soon as you are on the latest version, so if you're in 2019, if you updated your compatibility level, or if you have a new database with compatibility 150, you automatically get this features turned on, right? And you should see the improvement of the performance of the existing workload just by upgrading without changing any code. And also they wanted to make sure that if you're, these improvements, you can see, and even if you're running at a scale, right? So if you are scaling out, um, you still should get benefit. So these are, a couple of the principles that Microsoft kept in mind when they were building it. But one note that I'll tell you, if you are not comfortable, or if you're not using query store, I'll definitely urge you to start taking a look and get familiar, because as you will see when 2022 come out, a lot of things that Microsoft will be doing is building on the query store. I mean, query store is already, one of the greatest tool for troubleshooting with your queries and, performance tuning. See, where things went wrong. And but they're building more and more. And you probably heard Bob Ward, talked it in public. They're actually turning on now query store for your secondary replicas for always and availability group. So our read-only nodes are going to have their own query store, and the read-write is going to have their own query store, which we didn't have before. In 2022, it's going to come out. It's already a public info. And I'll show you some demo today, one of the 2022 feature that's built on the query store. So this is a slide, and this is not under NDA. I actually got it from a YouTube video that in the Data Expose channel that Anna Hoffman ran, Pedro Lopez talked about. So I took a screenshot. I made sure that I put the source here so I don't get into trouble. So as you can see, there are C feedback, DOP feedback, feedback persistent, approximate, all these are color coded. These are coming in 2022. I will demo you something around the feedback area. It's not exactly DOP or C feedback, but there's something called query store hint. I'll show that. That's the only thing I'm going to show in 2022. Once it get public, like I said, this talk will change heavily, because I don't think so in a 1 hour talk I can demo and talk about all this. So, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I have to think about it. Probably just talk about the newer ones and not talk about the older ones. So let's move ahead. So before I dive into the features, I want to talk about, there's a system catalog view that in 2019 CU16, I last time checked, there is 23 records in the system catalog views. So what you can do, um, even if you are with the latest compatibility level, but you can still turn on and off some of the knobs. So if you go and look at this 23 database scope configuration, you can turn those on or off at a database level, all 23 individually. Um, so even if you're in a 150 compatibility level and say, okay, I like these features, but this is one feature that my workload is not behaving properly. How can I turn it off? Because if you go to 140, then you are missing on all. So then in that case, you can go to this, look at all 23, and then turn on and off whatever you need. And then you can go one step down actually. This one has hints. Also, there are 23 of those. Somehow, it's a coincidence. There's no relation with the one that I showed you before. This one you can control at a query level. So you can go into query level, and you can turn on and off at a query level. So you can keep it on at a database level, but if you have one or two query that's not behaving the way you want, you can turn on and off these features. So looks like, I only saw one comment that, spend less time on the slide. So I'm going to breeze through this, because you can download this from my GitHub repo. Every slide you will see these three symbols. So for each feature, first I want to describe the problem, how Microsoft solved it. And there is always some things good to know, once they solve it, right? Because there are some restrictions, some limitations, and probably something that I thought people should know before they use it. So I put those in the caution slide. Um, so let's go ahead. Adaptive join. And now you might be wondering on the left, what are these numbers, right? 140, 150, why there is no like SQL Server 2017, SQL Server 2019? Because if you are using Azure SQL Database in past service, there's really no concept of SQL 2017 or 19. The only way you can control behavior is through compatibility level. And if any of you are not comfortable, or you are not very sure, what's the compatibility level, I would highly urge you to, to start reading about compatibility level. Microsoft even, uh, you know, challenging the vendors to certify their product based on the compatibility level, going forward, not talking about the major versions. So that's why I put this. So if you see a slide that says 140, 50 means this feature was released in SQL Server 2017, which default compatibility level is 140. Then of course you can use it for, it's also available in 2090. So the adaptive join batch mode, uh, it really tried to, because before this feature came out, people were using uh, join hints, right? So people are forcing hints, and Microsoft, didn't want people to do that. So based on the cardinality, Microsoft Now let the query decide if I'm going to do a nested loop join or if I'm going to do a hash join. So by default, it's a hash join, but there is a there is a threshold. If you are below that threshold, it automatically will switch to the nested loop join. And I put a URL here. You can go and read this URL. And it actually explains how the threshold get created and how on the fly the query optimizer is going to decide if you're going to do a hash join or if you're going to do a nested loop join. Uh, and in my caution slide, I said, this only works for selected statements, and a join needs to be, of course, eligible for both. And if you are using adaptive join, or if your query qualifies for adaptive join, you will incur a little bit of a higher memory, because it will always reserve some memory for the hash join, to create the hash table, and even if it switch to nested loop join. I'm not sure if people will still have access to the chat or no, but for putting questions or comments, maybe Eric or Dan will know better. So Uh, the next one was a table variable default compilation. So a temp table, and you will always see this in the in public forums. People will always talk about, should I use temp table or should I use a table variable? And there are many pros and cons. There are places where you should use which one, but I'm not going to get there. But when you are using a temp table, what happens is, uh, during compilation of a statement, if it sees that there is a temp table and in the code, but the temp table is doesn't exist still, or it doesn't know how many rows or anything in the temp table, actually that compilation get deferred. But for table variable, historically before 2019, it never got deferred, right? So it will get compiled even though it has no clue how many records in the temp table. So it will always have a fixed cardinality guess of 1. That was always a problem, right? Because now you really have no idea how big is your table variable and how many rows you have in the table variable. So that problem got solved in 2019 by this feature called table variable default compilation. So what will happen is, it doesn't change any of the characteristics of the temp table, and some of these, uh, I think I put it here, like only inline index definition doesn't trigger recompile, and table variable doesn't have automatic stats creation. So none of these get changed. But what it does, it delays the compilation, and then when your table variable is loaded with the data, it sees how many records you have, and in that at that time it decides, based on the cardinality, that it might choose a nested loop join, or it might choose a hash join, because now it knows how many records you have in the table variable. Again, some of the stuff that I said, it doesn't fix parameter sniffing, um, and doesn't change the other characteristics of the table variable. Next one is a interleaved execution of multi-statement table valid function. This is another data structure that had problem. Before 2014, if you are using a multi-statement table valid function, it always guessed 1. And from 2014, that number was up by 100. Still not enough, right? So if you had a table valid function that was getting called for each row, and if you're calling it for thousands or millions of rows, it had no clue. It will always guess 100 or 1. So now what it's going to do, it is actually going to inline the definition of your table valid function, and then uh, you know you get a better performance, and you'll see this in the demo. There are some restrictions, which table valid functions get inline, which one does not get inline. I have a URL at the end, so you want to read that, because not all table valid functions are going to get inline. There's a lot of restrictions. If you have certain things in your table valid function, those are not going to get inlined. If I'm going too fast, let me know, and put this in your chat. Memory grant feedback in a batch mode. Again, this was released in 2017, and of course continued to 2019. And there is going to be improvement in 2022, which is the public. Right now, this feature, memory grant feedback, once the plan is cached, after the memory gets stabilized, I'll show this in the demo, uh, then it stays in the cache. But if you do a reboot or the plan get evicted from the cache, then you lose it. Next time it has to again, um, y- y- you know, it will adjust itself. But from 2022, it will get persistent. So next time, even the plan get evicted, or I'm not sure if it's going to survive a reboot because I haven't tested it, but Bob Ward and Pedro Lopez talked about it in few different public forums. So what's the problem here? As I talked before in the slide that sometimes due to the wrong cardinality estimation, you might get more memory or you might get less memory. Now, what it is going to do first time when you run the query, if it sees a warning that I did not get enough memory or the memory you gave me, I only used a fraction of it. So next time you run that same query, it's going to use the same plan, but it is going to adjust your memory grant. So it's not wasting your memory or it's not giving you less than you have to spill to the disk, right? So after a couple of iteration, and there is a new in SQL Server Management Studio in the execution plan, which I'll show you. There's a new property called use memory grant feedback adjusted. Also, if you're looking at your XML query, the query plan in XML, you will see this, and it will give you some idea whether it's still adjusting or it's already adjusted and it's stable right now. There are uh, some restrictions. If the grants are under 1 MB, it is not going to even look at it. There is a math, when does this get triggered? So if there is a spill to disk, it will get triggered. Or if your granted memory is twice the size of the actually used memory, right? So if it gave you whatever you used, if it gave you twice, more than twice that amount, then this adjustment will kick in. Memory grant feedback was initially released for batch mode. Now it's also available for row mode. So if you do not know what is batch mode and row mode, batch mode was released with the in-memory world TP tables. And that means it doesn't go row by row. It actually look at a large number of row set as one unit. So which is very efficient for IO purpose. And then there was a request from the community to enable that for the row mode, like like regular B-tree indexes and all that. And finally, that feature is there right now. So a lot of stuff that is been released for row mode, or sorry, that has been released for batch mode. But if your row mode get to batch mode, if it can take advantage, you automatically can take advantage of those features. Uh, T-SQL UDF inlining. This is another one. User-defined functions um, get inlined, right? So again, this has the same problem. Some of the problems that I put here: serial execution, lack of costing, and then I said imperative code does not scale. And what do I mean by that? Imperative code means like if you have like if else and while loop in those user defined functions, then they don't perform very good. And because of that, the user defined functions get inline. Again, there are a lot of restrictions, so you want to look at those. And in Management Studio, there is a property now which will show you if your um, user defined functions got inlined. And how does the inlining happen? There is a paper where you can read a white paper called Freud Framework. It's very deep, very technical. If you're interested, go and take a look. Um, there are requirements to be eligible. And when you are writing a user-defined function, if you do not want to get this inlined at all, you can actually, in your function code, you can set inline equals off. So you can do that within the function definition, just to keep in mind. And in your sys.sql modules, you can see if your function is even eligible for inlining or no. So there is a bit 1 or 0 that will tell you that. Batch mode on row store, I just touched upon it, right? So this is got enabled in 2019. means we can now take advantage of batch mode on even a row store data structure. But these are mostly for bigger tables. If you have a small table, you're not going to you're not going to get that advantage, and I'll show you this on the demo. So just keep that keep it in mind that batch mode on row store um, is going to help with the CPU consumption, right? If your bottleneck is IO related, uh, uh, it's not going to help you. Then you probably want to. So what I'm trying to say is a column store and batch mode on row store. These are two different things. Of course, you cannot use column store for everything. There are some restrictions that itself is a totally a different talk. So, right? So you want to look at that. And there are some restrictions that I talk about. There are some kind of columns like XML column, sparse column, large object columns. They won't kick in for batch mode on the row store. There are some restrictions. Approximate count distinct. This is totally for dashboard kind of scenarios. If you are doing, like if you're working in a bank or you are doing, calculations with money, you need the exact numbers. This is not for you. So just keep that in mind. But if you're doing some kind of analysis, you're looking at trends on billions of record. This is, this is super. And this is really impressive that, especially on your memory consumption. I'll show you in the demo. And in 2022, there is a more feature coming in this family. So if we quickly go back to that slide that I showed you, here you can see that on the approximate query processing, there will be approximate count distinct. There will be approximate percentile. That's a new one that's coming up, mostly for, for analysis purpose. Uh, Okay, so this one is a 2022 feature. This is now available in Azure SQL Database, but it is not available in any on-premises. So it will be available in SQL Server 2022 query store hints, and I will demo this. I'm not going to read this slide. Basically, what it does when you execute a query, that query get captured in the query store, and you can grab that query ID from the query store, and you can put a hint with the attached to that query ID. So when next time that query get executed, that hint will get used. So when you're going to use this, right? And I put some examples here. I'm not going to read everything. So like you do not have the access to the code. The code is getting generated with some, from application, or if it's a third party, uh, you know, application that you cannot modify the code, or if you have a firefighting scenario that you don't have time now to modify it and go through the dev QA and test and everything, right? You need to fight the fire right now. In that case, you can just grab the query ID, put a hint, and let the fire, you know put the fire off, and then later on you can go and revisit. Uh, there are some things you should know, that if you have a hard-coded hint into the query, but you put it another hint through the query store won't going to get win. If there is a hint contradiction that it doesn't work, query still will execute. It will just ignore your hint, and query store hints are persistent. And you can also delete it anytime once you fixed your code. Uh, these are some of the sample code that I put. If you want to disable a hint, how you do it at a database level. Also, you can do it at a query level. And these are some of the resources. And we're going to go to the demo. So before I go there, I want to ask if anyone has any question, comments, or anything before I go to the demo. I know I went fast just to respect the time. So I don't see any comment or anything. So I'm just going to keep moving. Do you see my management studio?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome. So this query I ran, sorry, not this one, the setup I ran before all of you came online. It takes about 18 minutes in my laptop, so I don't want you to sit here for 18 minutes and see this. So I ran this, and I put enough comment, And again, like I said, once you download this from my GitHub repo, if you have any issues setting this up, please send me a quick note. I'll help you out. Now, all this that I'm going to show you, you can download this from here. These are written by Microsoft, and they're absolutely okay for us to download this and demo. Of course, I modified this, right? I modified this for the way I wanted to present. But again, the main queries are all written by Microsoft engineers. I want to make sure that I make it very clear to you. And I checked with the team; they're absolutely okay. And if you have any feedback once you try this, you can let me know, or you can send this directly to them, to the team. The PMs, they definitely monitor this email address, right? So the first one, let's get moving. And many of these you will see that I'll change the compatibility level. Means I want to show you how this work in 2017 or in previous version, then how it works with the newer version. But the good thing with compatibility level is I do not have to use two different engine. I can install on the same engine, but I can just change the compatibility level to make my database behave like 2017. At the same time, just by changing compatibility, it's going to behave like a 2019. And many a time I'll clean the cache, but do not do this in production. It's just for demo purpose, right? So I make sure that I know I have a clean, I'm just compiling the query again. And I'll turn on, actual execution plan. You can do this from here or by Control M. Now, if I do this and run this query, you see that I have a batch mode because I'm on a column store index. Now, if you see this adaptive join, right? Normally, before 2017, we would see either a hash join, nested loop join, or a merge join, right? We have never seen adaptive join. And if you come here, this is adaptive join, but it did a hash match. And it also has a threshold. So what happened here, this one, 206 rows, which is above the threshold. So it decided to do a hash join. And even though you have this, but this branch didn't do anything. Look at that, right? So you have two branch, but only one get executed. The other one did not. Even look at the time here. Oh, no, I didn't want to do that. 0 second. Is it still true that, so there's a question, is it still true that you can go up on the compatible level versions, but you cannot go back and down? I can always go back and down. As you see, I'm in 2019. I just went down to 140. Means, so the question is it still true that you can go up on the compatible level versions, but you cannot go back? I can always go back, right? I can show you this 120. It's not going to complain. Now I can go back to 140. Yep, I can do that. No, so that's not true. You can do. And right now, as you saw, I was in 140 because this feature came out in 2017. I want to show that. So I'm going to delete, and this is just for a demo purpose. Now I'm putting some rows. So there's only 5 record, right? And let's see what happened this time. Now look at the execution plan. Go to the adaptive join. This time it did a nested loop join. Why did it nested loop join? Our threshold was 11.35. And how many rows qualified? Sorry. Only 5. So the threshold was 11. We only had 5 rows, means it's below the threshold. This time, if you see this branch, nothing happened on this branch, right? Look at the time, 0 second. It operated on this. So it's automatic. We didn't have to do anything. But before this, if your first compilation was with the hash join, you always get hash join, doesn't matter how many rows. If you get compiled with the nested loop join, you continuously get nested loop join. Question. with the introduction of batch mode on row store, can I take advantage, right? So what I was saying, because this was a column store index, so you got batch mode. Now, if I did not have batch mode, the question is, can I still take advantage of this? So yes, if you row store. So what do I mean by that? Look at this. We have a row store, but I qualified for a batch mode. And because I qualified for a batch mode, I also qualify for adaptive mode join. But do you always get that? No. To give you an example, I created a store procedure here just for demo purpose. And I'm going to run this. So first time I ran it with 10, and then I ran it with 361. Two different values, right? You see, my first time it went with a hash match instead of a adaptive join. So now every query I ran with the same, same signature or, same query hash, I'm not going to get adaptive join. But if I would have called the same thing, so let me clear that from the cache. Now I'm calling the same thing. Look at this, just with the different, right? Now I call 361 first and the 10 second, right? And 10 after that. What happened? My first one got with adaptive join. Now everyone I'm going to get adaptive join. So it's not guaranteed, right? It will depend on your first call. If any question, please put in the chat. I'm going to go a little bit faster because you lost some time. But again, I do not have to finish all this. It's more of what you folks want, right? I know some people left. Maybe they didn't feel comfortable after what happened, but that's okay. We cannot control everything, so I'm just going to control what I can. So Mark's question, is there a significant storage cost for turning on query store? The reason I ask, I have hundreds of very active database, and if I turn them all on, I want to make sure I understand the anticipated impact. Also, there's an associated CPU and memory cost per database that's turned on. So, Mark, I know this is a little bit off topic. One thing I can show you quickly, because you asked this. In the newer versions, there are a couple of cool things that came up. I know I'm going off topic, but like I said, I'd rather answer your questions. You can decide max plans per query. Do you want to save 1,000 queries per plan? Do you want to save 1,000 plans per query? I don't want to, because who's going to go back to 1,000 plans and compare, right? So you can adjust this. That will save you space. You can control all this. You can say, if a query did not use this much CPU or the execution time is less than this, I don't care, right? Because you probably want to start tuning from the top. You can, how many execution counts and it's still, so there are a bunch of things that you can control to save space. And yes, the storage is per database, so it goes with the database, but there are blog posts by, there are pluralsight course that you can definitely, you have more, knobs now than when Query Store first came out. I'm going to leave it there, but ping me later on if you want to, discuss this more. Okay, great. So we talked about table variable deferred compilation. Again, this is a common code you'll see me running over and over, so I'm not going to even talk about this anymore just to save time. Turn on execution plan. Now, I'm acting in like 2017. I have a table variable, I do insert, and then I use it, right? Takes about 20 seconds. In my laptop, I tested this. It's a lot faster now. Good. Now you see what happened. The problem. Estimate 1, actual number 500,000. Because my estimate is only 1, what happened? SQL Server did not give me enough memory. Because it didn't give me enough memory, I had to spill now 664 pages had to be written to the disk, which is bad, right? Because now I have to write those, sort those, and bring it back, right? And yeah, so now just going to increase my max dictator parallelism. I did not change the code. Look at this. I haven't done anything. I just said change my compatibility level to 150 means behave like 2019. I'm going to evict that plan and I'm running the exact same code that I ran before. There's no difference. You'll see this one will run a lot faster. And now if I look at this table scan, look at my estimated number of rows and look at my actual number of rows. And do I have any warning in the hash? No, because I got a lot more memory and I got 120 megabyte. So no code change just by upgrading to 2019 or your compatibility level. I can take advantage of this. So, if you are sometime, I'm an operational DBA, um, traditionally, but now, moving more into cloud stuff, a little bit more into data engineering. But, we always, get into this that, okay, we don't have time to upgrade now. Like right now, I'm trying to get rid of all the 2012 because the date is coming soon. But these are some of the things that you can show to your dev leads or your architects like, hey, without any code change, you can take advantage of this, right? And your code is going to run faster. Uh, Interleaved execution. So again, I'm going to create a function here. And again, this is all for demo purpose. And okay, so my demo starts here, standard code. Turn on the plan. Now I'm using this function, right? As you see here, I'll be calling this function. Now look here, because it's 2014 and above, again, same problem. Met actual. What happened? Same problem that we've been talking about. Not enough memory. What do we do? Nothing. Just changing this to 140. And what did I use here? So 130. So this feature came out in 2017. So here I'm acting like 2016. And I'm not going to change any code. I just said upgrade to compatibility level to 2017. And I'm running the exact same code. No change. Not a bit. Right? And I do not see any warnings. Memory grant feedback. Sorry, here I should have shown you one thing. It's in my notes and I'm trying to rush, but this is a new property. It tells you that, contains interleaved execution candidate true. And I also believe there is a property here. I can't remember right now, but there's another property that, oh yeah, okay, awesome. That's what I was trying to show you. That's how you know that you definitely took advantage of interleaved execution. Okay, so memory grant feedback. I ran this code. And I'm gonna run this. You see a warning here. What did it say? Got too much memory. Why? It gave me 67 meg. I only use less than a meg. In old days, once this plan get into the cache, every query with the same signature will get this 67 meg. No adjustment. But now, another thing you can look at. Come on. Is memory grant feedback adjusted? No, because this is my first execution of this query. I haven't seen that plan before. Okay, I'm calling the same thing with just a different value. I still have a warning. And if I right click, look at the properties. What does it say? Yes, adjusting. You see that now? Run this again. Go back there. Still adjusting. Run this again. Stable. That's it. So now it find, good place. It's going to leave it there. Uh, there are certain restrictions if you get used less than 1 megabyte. If it sees that too much fluctuation on every execution, I think it gives up. It doesn't try anymore. So there are certain limitations of this. You wouldn't see this with every query. And I think I put some of the notes in the slide. This also works for row mode. So I'm not going to run this. I already showed you what's the batch mode on row store. So it's the same thing. That was the column store. You can see that it's a column store index scan. But even if you have a regular B-tree index, and if it qualifies for batch mode, you're going to get the same memory grant feedback. So let's skip this one. Scalar UDF inlining, right? We talked about this. So let's look at this one. Again, I'm going to create a function just for demo purpose. Now I'm going to use that function here. Oh, no, we're just checking if this function is inlineable, right? It says yes. Even if it says yes, it doesn't guarantee that it's going to be inlineable. It depends on during the optimization phase. Turn on actual execution plan. Here, this is one of the examples that I showed you how I can disable one of these feature at a query level. I want to make sure that I show this to the demo. So say you upgraded, you like these features, everything is working fine. There's one query giving you a hard time, and you don't want this query to take advantage of this particular feature. You can always put a hint and say disable. So if I run this query by disabling this hint, what happens is, okay, now look at this. Just by looking at this plan, right? It looks pretty good, right? So cluster index scan. Of course, if you could do a seek, probably better. But there is no mention about this functions. Function that it is getting called so many times, it is getting called row by row or anything. But if you come here, sorry, wrong place. Look at that. Almost all the time was spent on the user defined function. And this is a new thing in the execution plan. If you use like 2014, you don't see this, that it separates out the function time. Now, if I am running this, just took up the hint, I'm not using that hint anymore. You'll see a totally different plan, and the function is going to get inlined. Look at the plan now. And if I come here, you don't see anything for the function, and your function got inlined. Batch mode on roster, right? I talked about it a few times. I just want to show you quickly what I meant by that. So again, here I'm using a hint. I said disallow batch mode. Just to show you the pre and post. And it's a row store. If we see here, table scan, execution mode is a row on a row store. Now take a note of this. The CPU time is about 27,781 millisecond. Now if I run this, I took up this disallow batch mode hint. So there is a microsecond. So now look at this. Batch mode, still on a row store. And if we come here, it's 10,000. So it was 27,000 and now it's 10,000. So without doing anything, just using the latest C, or you have to upgrade to use the latest C, you can reduce the runtime by almost 50% cut down. And if you want to see this feature was not available pre 2019, I said you can go to 140 and you can run this. You will see that it was not available, so I'm not going to do that. Approximate distinct count, I'm going to skip this. I want to show you the query store hint one. So I'm just skipping one. And this one, today it's not available on the on-premises SQL Server. So I did spin up a Azure SQL Server and Azure SQL Database to show you this, right? So and I can share this code, to set this up. I did set this up beforehand. So San Diego EUG demo is my resource group, and I have a server and I have a database, right? So I set this up before to show you this. Now this is using query store. So in Azure, you cannot say use database name. So I have to make sure I'm in the right database. And I'm going to do some settings for the query store and make sure the query store is in the read-write mode, because query store can switch to read-only mode if it reaches certain threshold. And there is a system view that shows that do I have any hint now? I do not have any hint, right? In my query store, I did not set any hint yet. And now, if I look at the data in this table, in this database or in this table, you see that we have an agent ID with 101. This agent ID has 100,000 properties. And rest all the agents only has, handful of this, right? So the data is not really distributed evenly, right? At least for this one agent. So now what happened? If I call this store property search by agent 101 because it has so many records. Oh, no, I should have turned on my. So my bad, I should have turned on my actual execution plan. It will be slow tonight because most my neighbors or people are using watching the game. So come on, it's my bad. Okay, good. Sorry about that. Turn on this, run this. Because it's in Azure, I am in Boston. It's in East US 2. Definitely going to take some time. Plus, I'm using a smaller size too. I should have probably used a bigger size so it could get a little bit faster processing. Well, I didn't expect that long. Okay. So now as you can see, because this has over 100,000 record, it went into parallel and, did a scan, right? Now, agent ID 4 only have few records. We run this, only has 3 records, still using the same plan because it did it from the cache. I don't want it, right? Because I have only one agent with so many records, rest all has few. So now what I can do, I can search this query in the query store and find the query ID. Query ID is 5. And now I can put a hint for query ID 5. And I'm putting a recompile. Now, do you want to recompile every time? It depends, right? There are other hints that you can use. I'm just taking this for an example, and you can put multiple hints also. So now I put this. Now, if we go to this, we didn't see any hint. Now we can see that we have one hint for query ID 5. So option recompile. And if your hint doesn't work, it will give you why it didn't, work and, why the hint didn't work and why did it fail and all that. Now, if I run this, we'll see 2 different plans. We'll see one plan for 101, one plan for agent ID 4. And if you remember, we did not change the code. We did not put the hint in the store procedure itself, right? We just put it in the query store. And then I go back and see, what the problem is. Should I write 2 different store proc? Should I, whatever I do, I can remove it. Now you see 2 different plans. For the smaller ones, I get this nested loop join. For the other one, I get a scan here, I get a seek and all that. Perfect, right? And we still have the hint just to make sure you can see that. And now I can remove it. Say like I fixed it. I don't need the hint, get rid of it. And just to prove my point, if I run this, again, I don't want you to wait for this. You will see that both plan again has the parallel plan for the both the calls. So that's pretty much. That's all I have. Again, I'm going to show you my um, contacts in case if you want to reach out. Any question, comments, anything? Mark has a, do you know if this is a feature that will become available for on-premises or this is going to be exclusively to Azure SQL? It is going to be available in on-premises. I was told in 2022, I was not under NDA or anything because I'm MVP. I think it was told publicly that it is going to be available in 2022. Now, is it going to be with the first public preview or is it going to take few iterations? I do not know. And there'll be a few more features as if we go back to the slide. Um, Even you, without putting any hint, Microsoft is going to become intelligent. It's going to give, DOP feedback and C feedback. So there's more coming. But that one, the one that I just showed you, is definitely going to be available. It's already in Azure SQL databases, so it's already there. But it is going to come on premises. Any other questions, comments? As you can see now, because I remove the hint, now both has a parallel plan. Yeah, so it's about, yeah, I mean, I have all the time, so I know it's getting late for you folks, and I know we lost some time. Sorry about that, but feel free to, ask me questions, comments, anything.
Well, I appreciate your time, Tab. I know it's getting especially late there on the East Coast as well.
Oh, no worries, no worries. Because I signed up for this, so I know what I'm signing up for. So no worries, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, I appreciate it, everyone. Everyone have a great day. Just remember, we'll have another meeting next month.
Stay safe and stay healthy.
Yeah, I know just one thing, you were recording, so I guess you probably want to watch the recording, cut to some editing before you. I'm
Yeah,
sure you guys are going to do that.
I have
So
to do quite a bit of editing.
yeah, yeah,
sorry,
definitely some editing.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure you're going to do that, but again, apologies for that. That was
Not your fault.
no, not yeah, absolutely crazy. I know, like someone I know that joined from East Coast. I know her for a long time, and she left. I think it was a little bit, probably she got embarrassed or whatever. But I'm going to talk to her later on.
Okay.
Yeah, Andre, you said, can I have unrelated queue to the topic? Definitely, we're a small group, so go ahead. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I do not know, I'll tell you right away. Okay, Jade said, thank you, Mr. Ali and the SQL group for hosting the session. I hope you return. I'm learning T-SQL because my job requests me to, so I appreciate learning other. Yeah, oh, and most of this I didn't write myself. Like I said, I pretty much copy pasted, edited few things. Yeah, but I mean, there are, yeah. Yeah, Andre, go ahead with your question. I do not mind off topic, and if any of you have to go, feel free. Don't feel bad. Uh, Andre, I don't know if you can unmute your mic. That's up to the organizers. I really have no idea.
Okay, I've enabled Mike's if he just wants to jump on the mic.
Yeah, I don't know, Andre. You probably cannot unmute mic. I see you do not have the privilege to do that, so you probably have to type it in. Yeah, you can take time to type, so I'm okay with it. If others have to go ahead. Thank you very much for for joining and listening to me. This is getting harder to give this talk in a 75 minutes. It's so much.
Yeah, and it's only getting bigger.
Yes, yes. So I don't know. I have to think a little bit. Take some time. What I do next time. Definitely not all the features. Absolutely not. Probably instead go to the demo and talk about those features during the demo. That's it.
Will you be presenting at Past Summit this year?
Well, I submitted, I didn't submit any pre-con. I only submitted regular sessions, so I'm still waiting. Hopefully, even if I don't get present, I'm still going to go to Seattle. That's my hope. So
Yeah.
I presented last 2 years. And I don't take any offense if they don't select. There's so many, good submissions. It's not easy task to pick and choose. So, I do not, take it as, anything. I mean, if I want to go, I go. So. Yeah, Andrea, now you can unmute yourself. If you click that, I can see that you have the.
Okay, now it will be easy. Thank you for presentation. So just some background around it. I have a huge Oracle experience, and I lately only like for the last half a year come to the SQL Server.
Okay.
So I'm right now inside the new LTP system, where there is a like one huge table with rows that some of them has dependencies between them, so they need to be processed in certain order. Right? And there is some process that just grab records from this table, process them, and then mark them as complete, and move on to the next step. And there is multiple processes running at the same time. So to process chains in certain order, there is a second table where whenever someone start to process first record of a chain, it put like reference to the chain, and like everyone is asking and checking that they're not stepping on anyone's chain, and chains are processed in order. And everything works normally, except like once in a while, the process just stuck. Like there is multiple, it's processed in parallel by multiple streams. And for any connection that's processed, I do first, when I get a connection from a pool, I print locked resources. It's nothing. Then I execute stored procedure that does it, commit it, and then again run what other resources are blocked by this particular session. I get nothing back. And I can run it, and it's run for maybe 5 minutes, and then the process stops because every session is waiting for some of the calls to the stored procedure. So no one is no session is saying that it's locked resources, yet after some time everyone is waiting for the session. Any hints? What should I look at?
So when you say every session is waiting, there's a DMV called, I don't memorize the DMV names, waiting tasks. So
Yes.
don't you, you do not see that what those sessions are getting blocked by, or what it is waiting for?
So this is exactly where I see them, that they are like that they are waiting for something to happen.
So what is that something? You
Uh,
do not know.
so I see that everyone is waiting for one or two sessions, and those
Yeah,
sessions
so they are blocked by that session.
Yeah, and that session is like if you look for the state for the session, it's sleeping, right? So it's not doing anything.
Okay.
It looks like there is a hanging transaction, right? So it's a forgotten commit. It's look like it, but there is no forgotten commits.
Okay, so hold on. So you said a thing that's important. You said it's a sleeping session. Check if their sleeping session has any open transaction.
I can see that it has locked some resources, but how I can check if it has open transactions?
Okay, so do you know there's a thing called SP who is active?
Yes, if I
Yep.
call the procedure, it tells me that this session is doing nothing, and here's the last query that it was executing.
Yeah, it's sleeping. So there is, just search online sleeping session with open transaction. There are a bunch of queries. I can send you one to identify, because what's going on, I believe, I'm just guessing,
Sure.
the caller, and when I say caller, it can be application, whatever, is not acknowledging. So you asked me, give me $10. I gave you $10. And then you did not say, thank you, I'm done, see you later, right?
Mhm.
I gave you that, but you didn't tell me that I got you $10. I'm still waiting.
Yeah, I
So that,
understand.
so that's exactly, there are many third-party applications. There are many people who write code. You will see that sleeping open transactions means I've done the job. I gave you what you want. You didn't close it. Until you close that, there are certain logs will not get released.
Right. So that was
Also on the SP who is active, there is another switch. You can turn on the log details, which is very intense. You don't want to turn that on every time. That way you can see that what are the logs still being held by that session, that I'm sure all other sessions that are waiting is probably looking for that log.
Okay. So that was the initial idea, that I have a hanging transaction that someone forgot to do commit.
Yeah.
Since all operations are done through storage procedure, I put commit right there at the end of the storage procedure. So on the database side, I know that everything is committed. Client code also do commit. And I also, on the client code, after executing transaction in the same session, I print what resources are locked by this session, and nothing is being printed. Oh, it's
How
like,
you are printing? How are you printing?
So this is Python code. So after executing storage procedure, I querying, what is it? Give me a second. DM tran logs with filter for this add session SID.
Session ID.
Yep.
And you
So,
said you're not seeing anything.
so I see one record always. It's a database, right? But it's normal.
Yeah.
So I filter out session, this one record that database is locked, and nothing else is being locked.
Yeah, I don't know. I would definitely try SP who is active. I can send you some switches that I use. First is to see if you have a sleeping transaction with open transaction. That will be a red flag. And if you have that, then there is a switch to turn on to see the logs right there. See what you see, and if once you see that, actually to show you on the other ones, if you see that this lock is granted, and in all other ones that are waiting, you should see that that same lock is pending for all other sessions. That's all I can think of without looking at more details.
Okay, but so this is basically the only idea that, for me, that's the only idea that I have. Right? Do you have any other reasons why something might be wrong?
No,
Okay,
I mean, I'm always, I always say a task, either it's on a CPU doing the work, or it's waiting for a CPU, or it is blocked if the code is written properly. When I say it's blocked, means I need something, I don't have it. It can be a physical IO. Then it gave to the OS, say grab this page, so it's waiting for that. Or I need a log, or for anything else, right? In this case, the wait is I'm waiting for the acknowledgement from the caller. So a task must be in one of these three states. There's no other if and but. That's how this engine is written. So either it's running, waiting for CPU to run, or waiting for something. So, and what is that waiting for something? That's what we need to figure out. And when you say it's a sleeping session, and you see that's getting blocked, oftentimes it's a it has open transactions that it's waiting for acknowledgement. In my experience,
Is
I can give you application name, that at my workplace, I'm not going to say this in public. It's a third party. It's a very well known vendor, in financial space, terrible for this.
So if I'm sitting on SQL Server, is there a way to send commit or rollback to particular session?
So can you ask me that again?
So I'm sitting on a management tool, right? So I can do whatever I want. I see that there is a hanging session. I know that it's good. can I somehow push commit to that session?
Can you somehow, what do you want to do?
Make a commit to that session, right? I don't have a hold on it. I'm not on application. I'm on database side.
Yeah.
I see a session. Can I push commit to that session?
Can you push commit? No, because you didn't call it. No,
Yeah,
you cannot.
I know.
No.
Okay.
No, you didn't call it. You don't have a, communication with that, right? You didn't do the handshake. So, right, you cannot say, I'm done. Whoever called it has to say I'm done. I got what I asked for.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You confirm my suspicious.
Welcome. I'm not a hardcore developer, so there can be tricks that people use, but like I said, I told you before, I'm primarily operational, but I do get help developers when they get stuck with mostly performance issues, rewriting and all that. So anyway, any other questions? Anyone? Any comments? Daniel put a link, it said, SP who is active is the best ways to see us. I mean, we all use it, so. Okay, if not, Daniel, I'm going to, and Eric, thank you so much for inviting me, and hopefully, we'll meet again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. This was great information, a lot of great stuff in the later versions of SQL Server. So this is fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Okay,
Thank you,
have
you
a good
too.
night.
You
Bye.
too. Thanks, everyone.